Greetings, it is I, your archivist, and today I wanted to take just a couple minutes and talk about Nightingale and use it as a case study for how we should really approach our world building. So let's first start with what the world building of Nightingale, because I think that is the strongest element of the game that exists. So first and foremost, if you don't know what Nightingale is, it's a game that is set of Gaslamp fantasy in which you are a survivor of a plague and you are trying to get your way across the Fey realms to this mythical city of Nightingale. There's more going on to it than that. We don't really need more than that. But it really pulls out from like Fey lore and Victorian era. Again, it's a Gaslamp fantasy. It's a very interesting setup. So as you are, quote, making your way to Nightingale, and again, please remember, this is in early access, so the story hasn't been fully done. Anyway, so that aside, as you're making your way to Nightingale, you're going across the Fey realms. And these Fey realms are built, once you get through a certain point of the game, they get built off of these cards that you use. And I think this is an amazing way to do procedural generation. Most of the time that we do procedural generation, it's in this kind of clunky way where it's like, oh yes, it's this dungeon, and I know that when I see this four-way intersection, that I know to look for the dead bird, because the dead bird means that, you know, we're headed to a dead end, and so, you know, we don't want the dead bird in the dead end. And we also know that the mimic is over here when there's claw marks on the wall. Like, it gets repetitive because as humans, we can pick up on patterns really easy. But the way that they did their procedural generation was to build out these whole realms or these maps that they're not necessarily large in a sense. You probably could run around from one end of map to another in maybe 5 minutes. But the maps themselves would get changed, and you would take 2 or 3 cards. I can't remember entirely the specific amount, but you would augment them. So you could do a desert biome augmented with plentiful resources. And so that would change the base idea of the desert biome to be something a little different. And you would run into a few different kinds of things there. And so on a general level, that world building was interesting. And there was kind of lore around the fact that these are kind of temporary realms that are seeming to rise up out of the Fey ether, as it were, right? The realms that these would rise from, and then when you would leave, they would kind of collapse. There was this kind of idea there. They may not have gone that. I may have interpreted it that way. Anyways, so another thing that was really cool about the world building was the realm augmentation, is that I could go into realm. So if I have my house there, so I've kind of solidified this realm to make it where it will not just break apart and fall back into the Fey ether, as it were. I could change it, and I could make the sky something different. Not just the sky, sorry, the entire realm. The one I'm thinking of makes the sky different because then you see the stars, and I'm a sucker for that, right? And so you see these stars, and the gravity like becomes far less, so I can jump and run faster, and the weight, like encumbrance, is not an issue anymore. So I would always choose that. I always loved it. It's great. I think it was very cool. So really cool ideas. And then you have the traders, you have the other NPCs, you have Puck, who's your guide. He's the last Fey who's willing to talk to humans. And it's like, and you know because he's Fey that something's up. That dude is not doing this out of the kindness of his heart. You know somewhere down the road he is going to screw you over. Okay, so that aside, I think Nightingale's a failure at this point. And that's very important because games kind of live and die on their release. Most of the time. This is a general principle. When a game comes into being, people are going to look at it, they're going to assess it, and they're going to say, is this a good game, yes or no? Is this fun to play? And there are many games that have failed, and we're going to set Cyberpunk 2077 aside for this argument because it is the outlier. But most games, they come out, people make their decision. They go, this is a good game, this is a bad game. If it's a bad game, people stop playing it. Now, there have been faithful developers who have taken a bad game and made it good. But the problem is that the bulk of people will not come back to the game. They have already made their decision. They're not going to do it. And so, as far as I'm aware, there has been no major comeback that has come from a dedicated base of players playing a bad game that has been turned good that has gone back to the mainstream. Maybe you know some. Comment in the comment section below. That's a novel idea. So, with that being said, it's very important when you're dealing with your projects. So, for instance, this is a video game. The goal of a video game is to have players play it. So the highest kind of quality that matters for the game is the gameplay itself. And I think that is where Nightingale really breaks down. The crafting is overly complicated, and I know there are some people who said they like it. I didn't like it. It kept ripping me out. Another thing that was ripping me out of the immersion or the beauty of this world that I just wanted to travel through was the hunger and thirst mechanics. Building was clunky compared to other games like Enshrouded that I liked. Inventory was a freaking nightmare. And the combat was dull. It was not interesting. I mean, jumping around and floating with the umbrella was far more interesting to me than the combat. They had a lot of good ideas in the game, poor execution. Now, why does it matter? You say, Chris, hey, I love world building. I want to be a world builder. I'd say, great. And here's what I actually think is the problem with the game, is that the developers were world builders first. Just as you may be saying, well, why can't I be a world builder first? And I would say, well, look at Nightingale. They're having to do a massive restructure because the gameplay, the purpose from which you chose that medium is not satisfying your audience. This would be like putting out a novel and the way that it reads is clunky and doesn't work and doesn't flow, and it just every paragraph pulls the readers out. It doesn't work. So when we're dealing with our world building, it is really important to ask ourselves why. Why are we doing this? If you are world building for the sake of world building, great, because the end goal is the effort itself. But as pointed out at the beginning of the Nicomachean Ethics, and yes, you thought you were getting out without philosophy. I've let it slide a couple times, but it will not be, so much anyways, going forward. But in the Nicomachean Ethics, they talk about the first thing out the gate. They say, hey, there's these sciences, and all these sciences point at good. And there are some sciences or activities that the activity is done in and of itself. When you do the activity, it's done. But there are certain activities that produce something that goes beyond the activity itself, which lends to something else. So like the example that they give is that bridle making, right? The bit and all that goes around the horse's head. Bridle making lends itself to horsemanship, and horsemanship then would lead itself to military tactics, and military tactics to victory, and so on and so forth. And so they say the science of bridle making is superior because it goes towards something that's beyond the activity itself. And such is the way when we are world building beyond just for the sake of world building, which is, again, okay. I do think there is a superiority to it because we are going, hey, it's not just for me. I want to take this idea and these concepts and the exploration of my soul, and I want to give it to other people. And I think that there's something beautiful in that. Now, the thing that you have to realize when you are making your why is that there is an opportunity cost. You are choosing to say, I'm going to pursue this instead of this. And this becomes really hard because as finite beings, we can't do it all. And there's a great Stoic quote that says, we are mortal in all that we fear and immortal in all that we desire. And what does that mean? It means that the things when we're scared, we recognize our mortality, not morality. We recognize that we're going to die. When we are desiring things, we think, oh, we're just going to live forever. And that's what we assume. So when you're world building, you really need to make sure you got your why down. What is the end goal? What is your world building pointing to? Because I think what happened with Nightingale is that they put far too much time and resources for the time crunch that they had into world building. Even though that's my favorite part. That's the whole reason I bought the game, the whole reason I keep going back and I keep bashing my head against the brick wall that is the game mechanics. It is for their world building. But I think that they took their time and they said, let's do world building first and not these other things. So At the end of the day, your why, when it goes beyond just world building for yourself, is that you have an audience that you are catering to. And you need to always keep in mind that audience, that whatever media that you are putting that world building through, whether it's building campaigns, which then means your audience are D&D, GMs and DMs who are going to be sitting at the table and exploring your world and using it as a setting for the stories that they're going to tell their players. This is very important, that you recognize who the end target audience is, and that you focus your world building and your time and energy not just to world building, but to the things that matter beyond the world building. That's what you should be having always in alignment. So there are my thoughts on it. If you have your own thoughts, your own conspiracy theories as to why the game may not be doing good, leave them in the comment section below. If you have any comments about some videos that you would like to see, comment in the comment down section down below. I have a video on how to write immersive detail that's coming soon. I have one for idea creation coming soon. And I have one for how 2,000-year-old geometry actually makes you a better world builder. And yes, don't worry, it's actually going to be legit, and it will make you a better world builder. And I won't make you do much geometry. In fact, I think this is a superior way than what I learned at school of geometry, because I hated geometry, but there you go. Anyways, Sarah's going to be doing her own content on the channel. We're going to kind of diversify, so you'll get some fun stuff. You'll get some talks like this. You'll get some more lecture-y type stuff where I'm going to deep dive, and sometimes I'll post my own stories on. But anyways, thank you for watching. Appreciate you. I hope to see you next time, and please do the algorithm things for the algorithm gods. And that'll be it. Have a good one. Peace out.